She thought he was being possessed.
That are not of this world.
I said, please, leave me be.
Restless places.
It scared me to death.
Where the dead walk among us. In abandoned prisons.
Something grabbed me from my collar and yanked me back.
Haunted museums.
And the next minute, my feet left the floor.
And historic villages.
We saw a ghost floating above the creek.
These are the most terrifying places. A historic prison inhabited by the souls of the dead.
Working here, I've had experiences that I haven't been able to explain.
At that moment, I was frozen in fear. All I was thinking was just let me go.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is known as the city of brotherly love. But one of its historic landmarks symbolizes terror and despair. Eastern State Penitentiary.
Eastern State Penitentiary was an enormous facility that was designed to inspire fear, designed to look like a medieval English castle, with the goal of scaring people away from the life of crime. It was the first true penitentiary in the world, meaning that its goal was not punishment, but the idea of rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation meant that prisoners would be locked alone in cells and kept silent to reflect on their crimes, which ranged from petty theft to murder.
You were in your cell 23 hours a day, with 1 hour a day in a private exercise yard attached to the back of your cell. You ate in your cell, you worked in your cell, and you slept in your cell. You very rarely, if ever, left your cell. Moving prisoners throughout the penitentiary required the guards to handcuff them and to have special hoods placed over their heads to conceal their identity so no one could recognize them.
Thousands of men, women, and children suffered within these walls, both psychologically and physically.
There were punishments in place to remind them they were not supposed to break the rules. These included things like the straitjacket and an iron gag, a metal apparatus locked around your jaw, and the tranquilizing chair. Over the course of the penitentiary's 142 years of operation, there were 1,400 deaths.
At least 50 inmates committed suicide. Many believe that with over a century of violence and psychological torment carried out within Eastern State Penitentiary, it's now a hotbed of paranormal activity.
Eastern State Penitentiary was abandoned in 1971. By the 1980s, it was a true ruin and completely overgrown.
It has since been designated a National Historic Landmark, preserved in a state of decay. Since 1991, it's been open to the public.
Today, Eastern State Penitentiary functions as a museum with thousands of visitors coming through its halls to view its unique architecture and its even more unique history.
Each fall, visitor numbers spike when staff transform the old prison into a horrifying Halloween attraction called Terror Behind the Walls. Employees and volunteers send guests through the complex as costume performers try to frighten them. But many times, the staff have scares of their own.
Just about all of us who have worked at the haunt has experienced something a bit odd. People would get their hair played with, being tapped on the shoulder. That was something that happened all the time.
During the event's first weekend, Shannon found that not all of the haunts were planned.
There's a small archway that is not open to the public. It is very dark. And I was like, okay, this is just enough out of sight that I can drink my water bottle here and it shouldn't be an issue. As I am taking a break and drinking it, I start to feel this discomfort. This kind of pressing coming in at me from the darkness. I feel like things are staring at me from out of that darkness.
But for Shannon, the worst scares would come when the show was over. As a manager, Shannon didn't wear a costume, but made sure the events ran smoothly.
Welcome to lockdown.
At the end of each night, I would walk through each individual cell block and verify that all of the actors have been cleared out of the attractions with my own flashlight by myself to just do my last duty and walk down the cell block. This was a very nerve-wracking job, I will not lie. There's a feeling as if the darkness kind of just closes up on you. I start to feel this kind of feeling as if I'm being watched. And as I'm walking forward into the darkness, I saw these three figures that seemed to be tall, they seemed to be men. I couldn't see faces, I couldn't see features. And I feel as if they are looking in and looking at me. I am freaking out.
Other cast members have had disturbing experiences during the event itself.
I've been doing Terror Behind the Walls for 6 years now. My position was SWAT team. I had a zombie brow. I looked like I was decaying.
Amy's role as an undead SWAT officer was to wait in a dark cell for a participant to come by.
We select someone from the crowd and put you into a real abandoned cell and interrogate you to make it more interactive and terrifying. That night, when this customer came in, I was waiting there for like about 5 minutes. When you're left in that room, I am sitting behind you and actually I give it like a few beats and then I grab you from behind, just growling in your ear. But with this specific moment, she was just kind of really, really scared and she's like, I feel like someone else is in here. And I'm just sitting behind her like, yeah, okay, it's just me. All of a sudden, something grabbed me from my collar and yanked me back. All I heard was this unhuman growling behind me in my ear. I was frozen in fear. All I was thinking to this thing, just let me go. Don't hurt me, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. I started screaming, freaking out, grabbed onto the person. She started screaming. All I could do was just wrap my arms around this person in front of me and just scream. I was in sheer terror. It finally let me go. And I ran out of that cell, just screaming and crying. The woman that was in there did kind of feel like it was part of the act since I was there and everything, so she actually thought it was me. I honestly not totally sure about who or what. I just know that whatever it is that attacked me is very angry. The growl that it made was not human. It's hard to describe because it was something I've never heard before. All I know is that I can no longer sleep anymore. I have bad anxiety now, insomnia, and night terrors as well.
To current employees of Eastern State Penitentiary, it's clear that the spirits of former inmates still stalk these cell blocks. They are here, and they are angry. It's Frank's place.
A variety of folks would come to Frank's place to drink and to eat and just to have a good time. It included actually, reportedly, the governor of California, Fatty Arbuckle, and some other folks from Hollywood.
But even among the power players of the day, one patron captured everyone's attention. She's known as the Blue Lady.
There was a woman in blue who would come over to the bar after work, and she would be friendly with the piano player, whose name we were told was Charlie.
The story goes that the pair soon became lovers, but the Blue Lady had a secret. She was a married woman, and before long, her estranged husband learned of the affair.
The story we have from the locals was that the husband showed up one night, caused a scene, and was promptly ejected by the bouncers.
Later that night, the Blue Lady and her beau took a midnight stroll along the beach below the bar. it would prove to be a fatal mistake.
The next morning, she was found with a knife in her back, dead. He was found unconscious. Most people seem to think that it was the husband who ambushed them down on the beach.
But that wouldn't be the last restaurant staff and patrons saw of the Blue Lady. It seemed the tragic nature of her death bound her soul to this location.
For many decades, people would either see her fully or they'd see an outline in a window.
Today, staff are well aware of the Blue Lady's presence within the Moss Beach Distillery.
I've worked at the Moss Beach Distillery for a little over 5 years, and now I'm a server. It was maybe 3 years ago, and I was a busser back then. So I was just doing some dishes, maybe 9 o'clock at night, and then I'm the only one in the bar at the time. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see one of the beer taps just pull itself down, and the beer starts flowing out of it. I stop doing the dishes and I'm looking at it, and I kind of I look around a bit to see if anyone else is playing a trick on me. And it pulls itself back up all on its own. Someone has to be there to pull it down and push it back up again. You can't accidentally knock it over. I saw something that shouldn't happen that I couldn't explain, so I was like, I want to get out of here.
For other staff, the Blue Lady's presence is much more menacing.
I've worked at the Moss Beach Distillery for 22 years. The daytime, it's fun, ocean view, and in the nighttime, it definitely does get a little bit on the creepy side. Sometimes I feel when it gets dark that the energy does change, and it's not every night by any means, but there are definitely some days where it gets dark and you go downstairs and you can feel that there's something down there. There's definitely a feeling that sometime arises, mostly at nighttime and mostly in the downstairs area. It was Christmas Eve and everybody wanted to get out of here, and so I was just like, okay, I'll go downstairs and grab the bottles that I need out of the dry storage room. So I went downstairs and all of a sudden I felt like a shift in the energy. Oh, I'm getting chills. I felt a hand touching the back of my head and my neck. It terrified me. I think my fight or flight risk came up, and I just bolted, ran upstairs, and I was just, and then I didn't go downstairs by myself for a long time after that because it really did scare me.
The Blue Lady has become such a fixture and draw at the Moss Beach Distillery that a piece of art was made in her honor.
We have a holographic sculpture of the Blue Lady that as you walk through the bar, the eyes follow you.
But the staff feels that the Blue Lady is quite particular about how it's displayed.
The plan was to put the sculpture in storage. I don't think she liked that. We were in the process of unhooking it all and taking it down, and got it all unhooked, put it down on the table, and we smelled smoke. And we run around down the hallway, and you can see we get to the office, and there's just smoke billowing out of the office. And all of a sudden, I realized that was way too coincidental. We literally took her off the wall, and then a fire started. And it was then that I decided that we really should put her back up somewhere so that we don't burn down. Knowing that she has the ability to start a fire definitely changed, how I feel about it. That's why we put her back up front, because I didn't want to mess with her.
For staff and customers of Moss Beach Distillery, it's important to treat the Blue Lady with respect. She's always watching. A historic village haunted by the ghosts of its past.
We all screamed at the same time, and we just ran.
I believe there are ghosts all over.
There may be some people who lived here who haven't left.
In the center of Staten Island, New York, is a sprawling 100-acre complex and museum offering visitors a chance to experience living history. Historic Richmond Town.
This is the oldest surviving historical village in New York City.
We span over 300 years of American history here, 1600s, 1700s, and 1800s.
But it's an open secret among locals that not all of the history at Richmond Town is living.
Richmond Town is known for being haunted. People see various ghosts in some of the houses, women that walk by in the streets, you know, just various sightings that have kind of unnerved people over the years.
Many believe that this activity can be traced back to the region's earliest and most tumultuous days during the American Revolution.
The majority of Staten Islanders wanted to stay with Great Britain, and so the British came and occupied Staten Island for the course of the Revolutionary War.
A few Richmond Town households opened their doors to the invading soldiers, including one family known as the Van Pelts.
The Van Pelts were a prominent family that lived in this area, and they had a young daughter. Her name was Pretty Van Pelt.
Pretty became close with the young soldier living under their roof, a teenage drummer boy.
She was always dancing around, and he would play the drum and she would dance around.
And I'm sure that she would have felt that the soldier was, in a way, a big brother figure to her. And I think she was like a little sister to him. I think, in a sense, they would be his surrogate family because he had left his own family thousands of miles away.
Unfortunately, Pretty soon fell ill.
And he allegedly had the prediction and premonition. He said, Pretty will die and I will be buried with her.
The story goes that his prediction came true. Pretty succumbed to her condition and died, and he was killed in a battle not long after.
And that the family then did bury the two of them side by side in the family graveyard, which is still here at Richmond Town.
But it seems that such a tragic course of events has caused their souls to be eternally tethered to this historic village.
I was 8 years old, and we went down to the creek. We decided to play down there and throw some rocks in the water and skip some stones and laughing and playing, just enjoying the day. When we looked up, I would say probably about 25 feet away, we saw a ghost floating above the creek. He was wearing what appeared to be Revolutionary War attire. He had what appeared to be a headband or a bandage tied around his forehead with a blood stain on his forehead. And he didn't have legs. We were so frightened that we froze. He was looking down slightly at first, and then when he realized that we were all looking at him, he raised his head and he glared at us. I mean, glared. That was when the silence was broken, and we all screamed at the same time and ran.
Jody was not much older than Pretty Van Pelt had been the summer before she died. Some believe the mournful young soldier mistook her for his dearly departed friend. Others believe they have seen Pretty herself.
Pretty, her figure has been seen, particularly around the family graveyard.
They can see a little girl dancing around and hear somebody playing the drum. at certain times.
With such tragedy connected to this land, historic Richmond town is teeming with spirits. But there's a darker presence here at historic Richmond town, one linked to a horrific ordeal from 1878 involving a madman named Edward Reinhardt.
Edward Reinhardt was a Staten Island resident. The story is that in 1877, he murdered his pregnant wife. Well, Reinhardt's connection to historic Richmond town is that his trial was held here in the courthouse.
He was brought here, tried, found guilty, put into the prison, and the sentence was to be hung.
But even death wouldn't stop Reinhardt from reveling in his devilish pursuits.
There have been some incidents of noises and commotion going on in the courtroom.
I used to run the gift shop downstairs, and at times when I was closing around 5 o'clock, I would hear footsteps up here walking or some footsteps coming up and down the stairs. I would come up and, try to get, hello, we're closed, you have to leave, and nobody would be here. And the hair on the back of my neck would just stand up, the hair on my arms would stand up, and I would feel such a chill.
Blue says he has no doubt about who is haunting the old courthouse.
It's Mr. Reinhardt. I mean, he was killed here, and I think he's still here, roaming around.
A repository of spooky curios and spirits.
I tend to think it is like a battleground. And I think there is spirits that are fighting for the highest position.
There's a lady in white that's seen on many occasions.
And the next minute, my feet left the floor and ended up in the corner. He actually threw me.
In the center of England is the city of Nottingham, famous for its Sherwood Forest and tales of Robin Hood. Today, it's a home to a creepy attraction that lives up to its name, the Haunted Museum. The building holds a terrifying legacy from the time it began as a theater.
This cinema was actually built in 1929. It was Majestic Cinema.
On the same grounds, however, was the local mental asylum, Mabberley Hospital.
They brought the patients in from the asylum to watch a movie.
It shut down in the 1950s, so it's been actually closed as a cinema for 70 years. No one's turned it into anything else. It stayed exactly like it is.
The space sat empty and in disrepair for years until Steve and Marie Wesson stumbled upon it.
Even though it was completely derelict and boarded up, I just thought, wow, it just looks amazing, and I wanted to see what was inside.
They thought the old theater would make an ideal home for their haunted artifact museum.
We've been collecting weird and haunted items for a very long time.
But they never guessed that the building itself would become the main attraction.
So we've got surveillance cameras here in the auditorium.
The security cameras around the building and inside, if there's motion detected, it will send me a message to my phone, which then I can log on to the cameras.
And one night when we came in, Steve said, guys, come and look at this. We've got an old Victorian hearse. With it being a hand-drawn Victorian hearse, obviously it's got a big handle at the front. And then the handle just flies up. So the first thing we did was try and, debunk it, could it be this, could it be that? And the way it goes up, if we was to throw that handle up at that speed, it would just smash into the glass. So something actually lifted it up, but something stopped it at the same time.
This would not be the last supernatural experience the Wessons would encounter at their museum, or the scariest.
It was about 1 o'clock, 12:30. It always seems to be around the same time in this building. My phone starts beeping. I actually clicked on it as I was actually getting into bed itself. A woman stood there, plain as day. And then disappeared.
He was shaking for a good half an hour after that because he was trying to rationalise it, but he couldn't because he knew that there was nobody in the building.
The woman Steve Wesson saw is known as the Lady in White and goes by the name Jess.
Jess wears like a white dress. It's quite old-fashioned. She's quite pretty. She hangs around in the auditorium. I think Jess possibly could be one of the patients from the hospital.
But Jess isn't the only mystery here. Staff have noticed an uptick in the paranormal activity. It seems to be linked to a recent discovery, something someone went to great lengths to conceal.
One of the guys that was working with me, he pushed on this wall, and behind this wall, there's a metal door. There are little, like, kind of claw prints going across and scratches over the door. We haven't opened the door yet. It is still welded at the top and the bottom. I will say we have tried to get into the door from different directions. We thought we'd get a bit smarter and go through the roof. But it don't help when the roof is also sealed metal. So at the moment, there's still no way in. There has been knocking. There's been kind of voices from the door. There is something terrible in there, so I'm going to keep it closed for a bit longer.
But something, it seems, has seeped through.
I saw a figure, and it's the first full figure that I've ever seen. It was a very tall, thin thing with a black cloak over it. I don't want to use the word Grim Reaper, but it did look like the Grim Reaper. For the rest of my life, I don't think I'll ever forget it.
As Marie would experience, this malevolent force becomes scarily violent toward women.
I felt a hand grab me, and the next minute, my feet left the floor, and then he actually threw me and ended up in the corner. For the force to be that strong, they wasn't small at all, and it felt angry. It felt as though it really wanted to hurt me and shut me up. Quite scary, to be honest. I did leave the room straight away, and I don't actually like going back in there.
I tend to think in the Haunted Museum it is like a battleground, and I think there is spirits that are fighting for the highest position.
Visitors to the Haunted Museum in Nottingham, England, are forewarned that inside, a war between the dead is underway, and they won't hesitate to harm the living. A foreboding old home with a portal between worlds.
I just feel like an overwhelming sense of dread.
I was never so terrified in my life. Thought I was going to die.
On a quiet street in the mining town of Belair, Ohio, is what some call the most haunted home in America, the Belair House. But it did not always hold that reputation. For years, Lyde Hetherington called it home.
Lyde lived in the house for a very long time, and eventually her brother Edwin came to live with her.
But on April 6, 1947, tragedy struck the Belair house.
Lyde had heart complications, and one day she had such major heart complications it did take her life.
Lyde passed away in the house. Her brother Edwin was devastated.
Edwin was a mess. Lyde was his lifeline. She cared for him when he was a child. He looked at her as a mother figure. Edwin longed to speak to his sister. He wanted that healing. He wanted to know that she was still there.
So Edwin brought in psychics and mediums to help him connect with his beloved sister in the spirit realm.
So he called in many different people to help him communicate with her from the afterlife. And if they were the wrong kind of a psychic, they did not know how to open or close the sessions. And that would have very much led portals to be opened inside of this house. And then they left him with those things to deal with on his own.
Locals believe that Lyde's spirit entered the living world through one of these portals and now haunts the Belair house.
I do believe that there's residual energy here in the house. I believe that we have Lyde here.
But there's also something malevolent here, something not easily explained, something accidentally conjured by Edwin, and it persists to this day.
I found this house on a foreclosed list. We had been homeless for some time due to some flash floods. We moved in overnight. It happened very quickly. When we walked in, it was just very breathtaking with the natural woodwork and the original parts of the home. When we finally found our way up to the attic, we saw gables, like the House of Seven Gables, and that's always been something that I wanted.
But some deals are too good to be true. It wasn't long before this dream home would turn into a nightmare for both Kristen and her dog Bella.
It was a normal night. Bella and I went to bed. All of a sudden, the door just swung open.
A terrifying presence moved through the door and entered the room.
And it was like a lingering black cloud. Bella was circling the bed. She was alert. She didn't understand what was going on. I couldn't move. I thought it was my last night alive. I didn't know if people were going to come home and find me dead. It felt like an eternity. And then Bella started barking viciously. She started growling. Whatever that entity or energy was, literally lifted her up and just threw her up against the wall. As soon as she was thrown, I heard her yelp, and it just broke my heart, and I ran to her. At that point, I was free. She did live, but she had a bum leg for the rest of her life. I was never so terrified in my life.
But Kristen quickly realized that a haunted home like this can be attractive to a certain clientele. She turned the Bel Air house into a unique B&B where people stay hoping to have an encounter.
A lot of people that come to the Blair house have reported being pushed down steps, actually physiologically becoming sick to where they vomit.
I was here one night as a guest. I decided to go up in the attic because I'd heard some noises. My friend joined me in the attic. I felt like I had a little hiccup. A few minutes later, I did it again. I looked over at him, and we did it at the same time. Then it turned over to nausea. We both started dry heaving. My heart was racing. I didn't know what was going on. I was in the bathroom vomiting. He made it to the kitchen. We discussed it, and we both had the taste of sulfur in our mouths. We hadn't eaten anything in several hours, and the dry heave and the hiccups were at the same exact time. So there was really no explanation to it. Whatever is in the attic does not want you up there.
But the attic is not the only place where this dark force dwells.
Kristen invited us to one of her groups for a special event they were having. And we were in the basement. We were probably down there about 20 minutes, just getting started in a session. To me, it felt heavy, and everyone was kind of feeling that, just feel like an overwhelming sense of dread. Someone in the group was asking questions, and we all heard it. All of a sudden, I heard this guttural sound like, and it just went past us, and we all heard it, so we were kind of looking to say, where did that come from? because it was dark down there. Next thing I know, I felt this burning sensation on my back. I just said, oh my God, I feel like my back's on fire, you know, and it did. It just felt like it was on fire. I had been scratched pretty bad. After that, I flew back upstairs. I was done. What happened to me in the Blair house was the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me. It's definitely made a believer out of me as far as evil.
If you ever check into Ohio's Blair house, do so at your own risk. You never know what you might see or what might happen to you inside this real-life haunted house. An abandoned police station in prisons, a malicious spirit.
Some people come here and experience this thing and just run for the door in terror.
I was so terrified I couldn't get out of the basement fast enough.
I would rank this place as the scariest place I have ever been in my whole entire life.
In Detroit, Michigan, 7 miles from the Motor City's bustling downtown, sits a stout and shuttered brick building. This was the Detroit 6th Precinct.
The 6th Precinct Police Station. In 1930, they spent $84,000, which is about $1.2 million in today's dollars. They opened up in sometime after March 1931.
A state-of-the-art facility when it first opened, it served the community for over 60 years before being shut down due to budget cuts. The building sat vacant until bought by tech entrepreneur Ed Steele.
We purchased the Detroit Police Department's 6th Precinct building from the city of Detroit in 2013. We intend to restore it back to its original glory and turn it into a cloud computing data center. It's a 26,700 square foot building. There's a firing range, there's a basketball court, there's vaulted ceilings. Each precinct had accommodations for a female holding cell, a male holding cell, a drunk tank, and then 10 prison cells to deal with.
But this abandoned building carries scars from its past.
I didn't even realize that this precinct had a reputation until I was doing this research in the archives in the library. What I discovered is that over every decade, crazy amounts of corruption and unrest, all the way from police corruption to riots where 500 people stormed the door and pulled out 10 prisoners from the prison.
According to local legend, over a dozen suicides took place at the precinct over its 75-year history. Both inmates and police officers.
At least 3 or 4 policemen have taken their lives in the basement of the evidence room.
Many believe that ever since, something terrifying has lurked here.
We've been in here working, and there's been a really surprising amount of activity that my crew has been reporting back to me. Strange sounds, things moving around, crazy changes in temperature. We will be working and we will hear loud crashes, strange things falling. It happens often enough to get these guys freaked out. I mean, some of these guys don't return.
We were here to check the building out. We had walked through the basement to look through the jail cells. As we were standing there, we physically felt somebody grab the back of our legs. I had felt it, kind of brushed it off. However, a friend of mine standing next to me felt the same thing, as though it grabbed his leg, went around the back of his leg. He turned and looked at me and asked, "What was that for?" He thought I was the one who had actually grabbed his leg. When I realized that it wasn't my friend that had touched me, my body filled with goosebumps and chills almost. You know that it was not a human that was touching you at that point. We realized that there was nobody else in that room with us. The fear that was in my body is undescribable.
Over the winter, we came into here and walked around and checked things out. We went to the basement.
We had some people come to look at the building, and during that time, they're inspecting with me and we're looking around.
We were down there, and all of a sudden, we started to feel these little rocks being thrown at us.
I felt something get thrown at me, so we looked around and there's nobody playing tricks on us, nobody with us, in a zone that there's no vibration, there's no earthquakes, there's no explanation for it, and it's happening. We're in zones where there is no ground. There's nothing crumbling anywhere, falling apart. It's brick and steel and wood.
They were literally thrown at us, like right at us, not dropping down from the ceiling or coming up from the floor, like tossed at us. And I had my arms crossed and they were hitting me in my arms.
It's one of the most surreal things I've ever experienced in my life. And having this thick winter jacket on, I could literally feel them hitting my jacket through the jacket itself. They weren't falling, they were hitting us with some force, like they were being thrown.
But flying stones are not the only unexplained phenomenon Ed and his crew have encountered.
I heard whistling in the cell block area. So I walked back there, I said, is anyone back there? And I looked, there's no one there. I searched the whole area. There's 10 cells. I looked in every cell. There's no one back there. So we had went to the evidence room. And I could feel an energy come towards me. And I felt cold air come around me. It wasn't a natural feeling. And then the door closed, and it locked me in the evidence room by myself. And I got Jeff, and he was on the upper floor. I called him down. I said, you got to come down here and check this out. We had heard over the years that prisoners were sometimes taken down there, not treated the right way. I felt like I had eyes on me the rest of the night. I was so terrified I couldn't get out of the basement fast enough.
I do believe that the entities that are in this building are of the evil intent. They want people to suffer just as badly as they suffered.
Some people come here and experience this thing and just run for the door in terror.
The sinister spirit lurking beneath Detroit's old 6th precinct seems darkly determined to drag visitors down to their doom, making it one of the world's most terrifying places.